Welcome to the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show with Corey and Justin. Here they are, the Fourth and Long Fantasy Brothers.
Welcome to episode 11. We're far into the double digits now of the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. My name is Corey, and I'm here with my actual brother, Justin.
Hello, this is Justin.
Justin, we are at episode 11, and today is the mock draft special, which we'll get into in a moment. But before we do that, how you doing, Justin?
I'm good, man. Thanks for asking. I wanted to bring forward another story that we talked about last week, which was the, possibility of some bigger name players opting out of the 2020 NFL season. We had our first big bomb drop last week, and that was that Damien Williams, running back from the Kansas City Chiefs, is opting out of the 2020 season. Interesting development, especially given the fact that we've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the first-round rookie, coming into the fold with the Chiefs this year. I'm curious, Corey, what are your thoughts now on Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Does he become a first-round pick for you?
Justin, with all of these rookies, there is with all the NFL right now, there is a substantial unknown. And while I want to get really excited about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because as you know, he was one of my favorite prospects, even just before he got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. Before I get too excited about that, I sort of have to, pump the brakes a little bit and remind myself that we don't know situation. And as much as we want to assume how things are going to work out, we simply just don't know. So with that in mind, I don't think you're going to see me get too bullish on Clyde Edwards-Helaire compared to where I was beforehand. Yes, Damien was in the mix, and yes, Damien was assumed to have some of that role. I don't know if him opting out all of a sudden means that, okay, all of Damien's role is going to go right over to CEH. You won't see me get super bullish, but I definitely am a little more excited about the upside and the ceiling that he has now. Again, you know me, I'm very, very reluctant on rookies and just unproven talents and talents who have moved to new locations. So I might hold off a little bit on boosting him too high. What are your thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, no, I think that's the right approach, right? You want to take that kind of wait and see approach. I think you don't want to invest too highly in an unproven talent, even though he is, highly touted, highly regarded out of LSU from last year. You look at Damien Williams opting out, and the running back room becomes far less, I guess you could say, crowded for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to really kind of take hold of that RB1 position in the Chiefs backfield. You got DeAndre Washington, you got Darrell Williams, you've got Darwin Thompson, the rookie from last year, which I know we both liked. And I think it just clears the path a little more, but I agree with you. I'm not willing to bite into him at the first round value. I think he's more of a mid to late second round in my mind at this point. I actually just recently updated my rankings. I currently have him at RB10, right behind Nick Chubb and before Kenyon Drake and Chris Carson. So I do think pretty highly of him. I have him as an RB1, but I don't think I'd quite bite on him in the first round. But there's no denying the fact that this opt-out does clear the path to more touches, especially earlier in the season with Damien opting out. I don't know, man. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, especially in PPR leagues. I think I'd bite the bullet here and take him in the second round if I had the choice.
I like it. Good call. And Justin, here we go. It is our mock draft episode, so let's get to it.
On today's show.
So here we go, folks. Mock draft day, and we are going to do a mock draft here based around what is really an awesome program that Justin actually showed me one day, and that is the Draft Simulator on Fantasy Pros. And if you haven't used it before, I would highly recommend it. It is a very, very useful software. It is free to use, very intuitive, definitely gives you probably the best draft simulation experience that you really can get other than actual mock drafts, because you're going to be drafting against simulated experts. No pick is going to be the same. The fifth pick in one simulated draft is not going to be the fifth pick in another. And that's what we're going to use today as we go through this sort of mock draft scenario. So in today's draft, you can see that we are going to do not a dynasty draft, but an actual, redraft 2020 season draft, half PPR, snake style, and we will be drafting in the 7th position. We randomize that order, and the 7th position is where we will be drafting. pretty much a standard setup, as you can see, for our roster positions: 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex position, the wide receiver, running back, tight end, a defense, a kicker, and then 6 bench slots. So again, if you have not used this Fantasy Pros Draft Simulator, I would highly recommend it. Before we get going, Justin, and before you start up the draft, I got to ask, you now know you're drafting 7th here. What are your initial thoughts? What are you writing off? What are you banking on? What are your thoughts about drafting 7th in the 2020 fantasy year?
Yeah, so before I get into the 7th pick here, I just want to also mention to our audience that it is so incredibly important to mock draft as often as you can, especially as we lead up in through the month of August as we approach draft season. It helps you get a feel for where particular guys may be going. It helps you get a feel for, how you want to build your team. Let's say you get a later pick, early pick. It helps you understand what you could potentially expect as you move forward in your draft. So that's really important. I would highly recommend all fantasy players draft it as often as you can, mock draft, and get a feel for what's going to come to you. In terms of the 7th pick, listen, I know I'm not going to be getting one of those top flight running backs, right? I'm going to be missing out most likely on, McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott, Dalvin Cook most likely. I'm probably not going to be getting those guys. I also probably will not be seeing at 7 a guy like Michael Thomas, but I fully expect players like, Joe Mixon, maybe Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, maybe Tyreek Hill. I fully expect those guys. So I'm excited. I think the 7th pick is a good barometer of not having that elite first pick in the first round at the early part of the draft and kind of seeing how the draft comes to you. So I'm excited for this, man.
All right, Justin. Well, why don't you scroll down, go ahead and start up the draft, and let's see how those first 6 picks go.
I'm curious, man. I'm curious. Here we go.
All right, so right off the bat, we had the first 6 picks in, and Justin, we had a lot of running backs go. Number 1 was McCaffrey. Number 2, Saquon. Number 3, Michael Thomas. Number 4, Ezekiel Elliott. Alvin Kamara at 5, and Derrick Henry at pick number 6. Now you are slated in at the 7th pick. One of those top-tier running backs is still there, and some awesome wide receivers, plus some other high-upside running backs are there as well. Justin, what are you thinking? Where are you going to go?
Yeah, I think I did not expect Dalvin Cook to fall to me here at pick 7. I think he's the easy pick here at this point, especially given the fact that he's now reported. I think the threat of a holdout is far lower. I'd feel a little more confident in selecting him here. I think I can wait on wide receiver at this point. Maybe swing back here with my 2nd round pick and grab one of these other top flight wide receivers, maybe a DeAndre Hopkins or Chris Godwin if he's still there. I think I'm going to go Dalvin Cook, and I'm not really going to hesitate on this pick, Corey. What do you think?
Justin, I wouldn't either. When you get an opportunity like this that just falls in your lap, you take it. You don't get cute. Take Dalvin Cook with the 7th pick and know you got away with robbery.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take him here without any hesitation. I'm going to go Dalvin Cook here with my 7th overall pick.
Okay, so the draft is going to wrap around now back to us. And in between our Dalvin Cook pick, we had Devontae Adams, another top flight wide receiver, go. Aaron Jones, who can sometimes be a 1st or 2nd rounder, depending on the draft. Tyreek Hill, Joe Mixon, who I know I was hoping would maybe fall to us. Julio Jones, and then Nick Chubb, which gives us back to the 4th pick in the 2nd round. Justin, some very tempting wide receiver options out there, some high upside running back options, and the tight ends come into play here. What are you thinking for our 2nd round pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the point where, I've taken Dalvin Cook here in the 1st round. There was a run on a couple other running backs. I was really, really hoping that a guy like Joe Mixon would fall to me here in the 2nd round, but that was very wishful thinking at this point. I think from this pick's perspective, I'm looking at a couple guys. I think there's a couple guys that I'm looking at here. I think the first one is DeAndre Hopkins. I think he should technically be in that 1st round consideration. I think he's appropriately priced this year. You got Kenyon Drake, Chris Godwin, Travis Kelce, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs. I think for this particular pick, I want to go running back with these first 2 picks and kind of shore up those two running backs here from my perspective. So I think I'm leaning at this point towards either Josh Jacobs or Kenyon Drake. Corey, what are your thoughts here? Where would you lean?
Yeah, actually, interestingly enough, I'm thinking the same thing. I like DeAndre Hopkins as a talent. The change of scenery will always scare me off a little bit compared to the commodities being where they were last year. So I was thinking Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs as well. And as you know, Kenyon Drake was someone who was on my list as being a really, really high upside play this year. I really want him, but I also really think Josh Jacobs is undervalued this year. I'd be happy with either of them. If you're going to twist my arm, I personally would go Josh Jacobs here. He's an awesome RB2.
Yeah, I think the reception side, I think it's going to lean more in Kenyon Drake's favor. But I think Josh Jacobs, I love the young upside of a running back like Josh Jacobs in the second round. I'd feel pretty comfortable with him. I think I'm going to go Josh Jacobs here.
All right, now we have a bit of a gap in between our next picks. And without a doubt, there's going to be a lot of big names that will be coming off the board. As a matter of fact, in the time that we have drafted, two quarterbacks have already gone off the board in the first two rounds, which is incredible to think about. That is completely against Justin and I's philosophy, but you're not going to hear us complain about it because now there's more options that are available here. So after we picked Jacobs, no surprise, Nuke Hopkins went. Lamar Jackson as the first quarterback off the board. Austin Eckler, DJ Moore, Leonard Fournette, and then Pat Mahomes, who finished off the second round. After that, Kenyon Drake falls all the way to the third round, which is pretty good value on him. Chris Godwin as well, falling pretty low at the 302 section. Miles Sanders, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, the two big tight ends go. And then Mike Evans before our next pick. Now, Justin, this is one of those situations on draft day that you just really want to grunt and groan because I think you and I would have loved to have Mike Evans there, but he goes one pick before us. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, he was one of the wide receivers I was hoping we'd be able to get it in the third round here because he really is that bona fide number one wide receiver, and I think he's being slightly undervalued this year, which I really don't understand. But looking now at who we've got left on the board, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still there in the third round. Corey, we talked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire earlier part of this episode. I feel like the upside in the third round is pretty tempting. We've already drafted two running backs. Where would you lean here?
Yeah, let's not talk anymore about him. Let's just draft him. I would 100% go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire here. I think third round is incredible value for the starting running back, presumptive starting running back on the Kansas City Chiefs. You might have to deal with a couple weeks where maybe he's getting into the flow of things, but after that, you could potentially have an RB1. Justin, this could set us up with 3 RB1s on our roster that we got in the first 3 rounds. I don't know. I would go nowhere else. And I like some of the other options, but I would go nowhere else other than CEH right here. All right. So after that, we're going to have a quick turnaround here, and we will have another choice, and it might be our time to go with a wide receiver. In between the time, though, a lot of wide receivers flew off the board.
Corey, you talked a lot about Adam Thielen in one of our earlier episodes, and he's here with the 4th pick of the 4th round. We've also got guys like Robert Woods. We've got Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley. I think at this point we have to go with a guy that could potentially return wide receiver 1 value. I know you're higher on Thielen than I am, but there's no denying the fact that he is a clear path to maybe 125, maybe 150 targets in this Minnesota offense. I think Thielen's the easy choice here in the 4th round. What are your thoughts?
Funny enough, Justin, I'm tempted by one other guy, and it would give us 4 running backs in the first 4 rounds, and that's Todd Gurley. And I would maybe consider it just because I know he's going to be starting the season on the bench, but at some point you're going to need him, whether it's an injury or a bye week or it's COVID or whatever it might be. I would maybe be tempted to go Gurley here. I really would. Other than that, though, I would 100% go Adam Thielen, and I wouldn't feel too bad having him as my wide receiver 1, especially after going running back.
Yeah, I get a little nervous if we miss on Thielen here. The pickings might get a little thin, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe a guy like Cooper Kupp or A.J. Brown falls to us in this next round, but we have to remember as well, we're picking at the early part of the 4th round. We've got a lot of picks to go until we pick again. I think personally, I'm going to go with Adam Thielen here just because I think we need to shore up that wide receiver 1 position. I think Thielen is one of the cheaper potential wide receiver 1s this year. I'm going to go Thielen and not look back.
So a lot of time will go, as Justin mentioned, between that beginning of the 4th round to the end of the 5th round. And boy, we saw a lot of high upside talent go. Le'Veon Bell and Chris Carson, 2 really high-end running backs, went right after Thielen. Calvin Ridley and Cooper Kupp, the wide receivers, went after that. Gurley and the next tight end, Mark Andrews, finished off the 4th round. After that, we had A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, James Conner, Robert Woods, Cortland Sutton, and Zach Ertz all go in the 5th round. A lot of wide receivers, plus another running back and a tight end. Justin, this is where things start to get a little messy and a little murky. Now is where you can really win your league. What are we going to do in the 5th round?
Yeah, so we've got guys like Melvin Gordon, David Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Terry McLaurin, DJ Chark, DK Metcalf, David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Parker on the board. I think, honestly, Corey, I'm leaning towards the possibility, and hear me out here. I think this could potentially happen. I'm very hopeful. I'm saying we grab another running back here. I'm thinking we either grab Melvin Gordon or David Johnson at this point. And then in the 6th round, since we only have about 6 or 7 picks in between us, that we try to get a guy like maybe Stephon Diggs in the next round to be our wide receiver 2. I think we go another running back here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I would agree. I would agree, especially given the talent that's out there. The choice between, I would agree, is between David Johnson and Melvin Gordon. And boy, that is, that's a close one. Defer to you. What do you think?
I think I'm going to go with David Johnson here in the 5th round at the 7th pick and hope and pray to God that a guy like Stephon Diggs is available to us in the 6th round.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Let's do it. All right, so the 5th and 6th round, the 5th round is done. The 6th round is picking up, and we saw a good amount of running backs go, plus a couple quarterbacks go, which freed up someone who I know Justin and I are probably going to easily go with next. After David Johnson, Jonathan Taylor went. Tyler Lockett went after that. Melvin Gordon finished out the 5th. Darren Waller, our next tight end. Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott led off the 6th round, which means, Justin, there's a lot of good options that ended up being left at wide receiver because only Lockett got picked in between then. So we have the options of Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, DJ Chark, a lot of good options. I'm thinking I know where we want to go here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's very tempting to want to grab a guy like Terry McLaurin, DJ Chark, but, you look at those guys' situations, they've got, you've got maybe Haskins, maybe Alex Smith, you've got Gardner Minshew. I think in the 6th round here with the 4th pick in the 6th round, I am leaning very heavily towards Stephon Diggs, the wide receiver 1 in Buffalo. I think that's going to be my pick here, Corey.
You're not going to get an argument out of me, Justin. I say let's do it, and let's be happy with our wide receiver 2.
I'm super happy with that. Diggs is our pick in the 6th round, the 4th overall pick.
All right, well, that leads to a lot of picks in between where we just went and where we are now. To finish off the 6th round, we saw a ton of wide receivers go. T.Y. Hilton, DK Metcalf, Julian Edelman, and Devontae Parker all finished out the 6th round. Plus, we had Evan Engram and Kyler Murray go. And then after that, we saw some running backs go and some more quarterbacks. DJ Chark started it off at wide receiver. Then we had Singletary and Montgomery, 2 young running backs, second-year running backs, trying to make it a good sophomore season went. Deshaun Watson, who I was kind of hoping would fall to us here because I'd be definitely advocating for his pick. Terry McLaurin, and then Matt Ryan finished out the picks before ours in the 7th round. A lot of high upside plays here, but also a lot of risk here. A lot of guys who you might be dropping after week 5. Justin, what are you thinking here with this 7th round pick?
Well, first off, to recap, I mean, look at David Montgomery falling to the 7th round. That seems like highway robbery. My gosh. And then a guy like Terry McLaurin. This is where I think the draft starts to pivot a little bit, Corey, in my mind, right? You go away from those guys that have proven roles on their teams to more questionable individuals. Looking at kind of the draft board here, I'm a bit conflicted. I don't like Raheem Mostert, so he's kind of initially off my list. But then you look at guys like, AJ Green, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, Tyler Boyd, Michael Gallup, Marquise Brown, even Darius Geis. I think there's a lot of upside, even Brandon Cooks at this point, but I think we could probably wait for him. I think at this point, looking at our roster, and let me actually just recap our roster here for the audience here. So far, we have Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs, Edwards-Helaire, and David Johnson as our running backs. And then we have Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs as our wide receivers. I think, Corey, we go another wide receiver, given the fact that we have potentially an RB1 on our bench. What are your thoughts?
So, Justin, I got to say, I don't love the receivers in this range, and I would go a running back here because, I'm not going to let this guy slip past me. Do you know who I want you to go with in the 7th round?
I'm thinking I'm thinking that you're thinking Rojo.
I don't think I'll be in a draft where I'll allow Rojo to slip past the 7th round. I really wouldn't feel comfortable missing out on him this year. I would go Ronald Jones, the starting running back on the Tom Brady offense. I understand that's a bit of a reach here, but in this zone, I feel you can really win your draft, and he would be a league-winning pick in my mind. I would go Rojo. I understand if you're completely against that, especially this early, because he might slide to us in the 8th round when we come back. So I am up for whatever you decide here. This is not an easy pick, Justin.
So if I'm looking at the players here, I honestly think that Rojo might be the best high upside play here. Corey, I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to go Rojo here. I think that's the right call in the 7th round.
I love it. I'm so happy that you did that. And now I'm hoping that maybe one of those wide receivers can fall to us in this next round. So after that, we ended up seeing A.J. Green, Jarvis Landry go. So 2 wide receivers immediately off the board. Our next quarterback, Josh Allen, went. DeAndre Swift, the rookie, ended up going after that. Michael Gallup and Marquise Hollywood Brown ended up going after that. Brown would be someone who I would say we could target here as well. Now our wide receiver picks are definitely limited. There are some tight ends out there that would be intriguing. There is one wide receiver that I'm seeing that I think would definitely be worth having as our 3rd wide receiver. But I want to know, Justin, what you're thinking.
I think, honestly, at this point, though, I think we've got enough upside at running back. But I don't know, man. I think I might want to go one more just because I think after these guys, the running back position and depth gets really, really scarce. I say at this point, we go one more running back, hear me out, and then we just load up on wide receivers for the rest of the draft. What do you think?
I'm fine with that. My only wide receiver that I would really want in this round, I think, would be Brandon Cooks because of his upside. But other than that, though, I don't hate the idea of let's get these last kind of sure thing upside running backs. And then after that, we could just focus quarterback, tight end, wide receiver, finish out the draft.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to go with my guy here at this point. We're going to go with Darius Geis because I think we have so much depth at the running back position at this point. Where I think we can afford to throw a lotto ticket at Darius Geis. And if he becomes the guy that I think he can be, which is a top 10 running back in the NFL, we're going to have an incredibly deep and solid, really, really solid running back room. I'm going to go Darius Geis here in the 8th round.
Do it. And now let's focus on quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. Now, Justin, I'm not normally one who would go with roster construction when you're on draft day. My philosophy is always go with the best talent. At this point, though, where we clearly have loaded up on running backs, now it's time, I think, to really focus on that wide receiver, quarterback, tight end group that we have to focus on. And boy, good thing we went running back, Justin, because look at the running backs that went off the board after we took place. Marlon Mack, Raheem Mostert, Cam Akers, Kareem Hunt, Kerryon Johnson off the board right there. Then we changed things up. Our first defense went off the board in round 8, which you will see happen, especially in your home league drafts where the San Francisco 49ers went off the board. Then we had another run of running backs. Sony Michel, Phillip Lindsay, Tariq Cohen go. Marvin Jones and Deebo Samuel, the wide receivers, go after that. And then Tevin Coleman. Wow, that was a lot of running backs, Justin, that went off the board in between our picks. And now some of those wide receivers that I thought would be gone are still available to us if we want them.
Yeah, I mean, I did not expect that many running backs to go off the board, but I think because we took so many running backs early, these other teams are looking at their boards and like, oh my gosh, we got to start loading up on some of these guys. I did not expect some of these wide receivers to fall to us. We've got guys like Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller still out there. We've also got tight ends, Tyler Higbee and Hunter Henry. I think, Corey, we personally wait until the latter rounds to grab one of these tight ends, and we go with one of those high upside guys like Ebron or Doyle I think for this particular pick in the 9th round, I'm leaning towards Brandon Cooks. We're considering him there in the 8th round, but I think we go Brandon Cooks here. The upside in the Houston offense is sky high in my mind. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, these are one of those draft day scenarios where it just pays off, right? And you feel so great when this happens where you're like, I can either go with this guy, but hopefully he'll fall to me in the next round. I never would have thought that Brandon Cooks would have fallen to us. This is another gift that's just fallen into our laps. I think we take Brandon Cooks as our wide receiver 3, and we're really happy about it.
I am in full agreement. I have taken Brandon Cooks with the 7th pick in the 9th round.
Justin, now it's wide receiver time, tight end time, quarterback time for us. There's a lot of high upside plays, a lot of young guys who are sort of coming into situations. But also, this is where you really start to cringe and close your eyes and just pick something. What do you think here?
Yeah, so we've got 2 more bench spots. We've got a quarterback, a tight end, and then defense and kicker. At this point, I'm leaning towards, honestly, I'm not really loving the drafting a quarterback at this point. I'm also not loving the Jordan Howard or J.K. Dobbins train, given the fact that we've already grabbed a bunch of running backs. I'm thinking either Tyler Higbee or Hunter Henry at this point. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you and I are thinking the same thing. I was thinking tight end. My tight end in this spot, whether it's between Higbee and Henry, I'm going to go Henry. I was high on Higbee when we first started the ranking process. Since then, I've gone back and I've watched some of his highlights and thinks he's more of just a dump-off specialist. I would go Hunter Henry here. This is a great place to get him in the double-digit rounds. You're getting a top 5 talent in the double-digit rounds. I would take Hunter Henry and just be really happy that he's my starting tight end.
Yeah, we've always been an advocate of drafting talent. I think Hunter Henry is the most talented tight end left available. I'm going to go Hunter Henry and not look back.
That's a great pick, and now we have some space. So we're going to see a lot of wide receivers and running backs get off the board here. A lot of those high upside guys are going to go. And now we're down to our final few picks as this is coming up. Like Justin said, we have our quarterback left, we have our defense and our kicker left, and a couple of bench spots. So now we have those quarterbacks really coming into play. Or we can continue to wait on that and really take some of maybe those high upside receivers or backup running backs. Justin, with the talent that's left out there, what are you thinking we do next?
Yeah, so we've got still guys like Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers out there. And then we've got, guys like Jamison Crowder and even Alexander Madison, who's the handcuff to one of our better running backs in Dalvin Cook. I think at this point in round 11, I'm leaning towards potentially grabbing one of those quarterbacks. And honestly, the highest rated quarterback on my board at this point is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees are the 2 names that stand out to me here. I'd be happy with either one of them. I say if you're leaning Rodgers, go Rodgers, and now we have our starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think I'm going to actually go against that, Corey. I'm going to go with the guy who I think might have the reception upside here. I'm going to go with Jamison Crowder. I know that's a guy that you like a lot. I'm going to throw a wrench in the works here and go Jamison Crowder here with the 11th round pick here.
Oh, you're after my own heart there. I like that. You kind of threw a wrench into the situation. Maybe a quarterback will fall to us there. So now at this point, Justin, we still have the option of going Aaron Rodgers. We have one more bench spot left, so we could wrap it up with one of our handcuff situations. I'm okay with any of those picks. What are you thinking?
Yeah, there's Brady, Stafford, Rodgers still left out there for quarterbacks. I think at this point, we go with the handcuff in Alexander Madison, and we roll the dice and hope that potentially if something happens to Cook, whether it's injury related or holdout related, if something crazy was to happen, I think we go Madison here, and then we grab whatever quarterback's left over. I'm going to go Madison.
Great pick. I think that's a really good call. He's definitely the player on our roster that we'd want to handcuff the most. At this point, Justin, I believe all our bench spots are taken, right?
They are, yep.
So at this point, it's time for a quarterback, or we could continue to wait on quarterback, get maybe one of the better defenses or kickers, and then just finish up with quarterback with our last pick. That's a strategy that I've used in the past to great success. But I leave it up to you, Justin. I mean, these last few picks, they can definitely make or break our squad, but I think you have the best strategy here and you know what to do.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with a defense and a kicker, and then we'll wait till the very last round, and we'll grab a quarterback. So I think I'm going to start with the defense here. I'm going to go with the New England Patriots defense. I mean, you look at what they did last year. I'm going to go with the New England defense here and not look back here in the 13th round.
Wow, even with all the opt-outs, I'm impressed that you're still believing in that. But I would imagine Bill Belichick will find a way to make that defense viable. Now I imagine we're going kicker.
Yeah, we're going to go kicker here. We're going to go with the high upside, high offense kicker. We're going to go with Harrison Butker from the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's a great pick. And now all that's left for us is quarterback, Justin. And let's see who's left for us. We have our choices between some high upside guys and some veterans who have shined in the past. We have a lot of good players available left on the board. Who are you thinking of the guys that are left?
I think at this point, I'm going to go with upside. And if I'm looking at upside, I'm looking at two guys particularly. I'm looking at Matt Stafford and Cam Newton. I'm going to go with the guy who I know is the guaranteed role, who has the high upside offense here. I'm going to go with Matt Stafford for the Detroit Lions.
What a great starting quarterback, and what a roster that we ended up coming up with. Justin, our starting quarterback is Matthew Stafford. Our running backs are Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, David Johnson, Ronald Jones, Darius Geis, and Alexander Madison. And our wide receivers are Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Brandon Cooks, and Jamison Crowder. Our tight end is Hunter Henry. New England defense, Harrison Butker, kicker. I would love going into the season with this team.
Wow. I mean, look at the depth at running back, right? I mean, we've got Dalvin Cook and Madison there locking up that Minnesota backfield. We've then got guys like Josh Jacobs, Edwards-Helaire, David Johnson, Rojo, Darius Geis. I love the depth at running back. I think you can always find those replaceable wide receivers on the waiver wire in your league. That's why I wanted to load up on running backs and then, grab a couple high upside wide receivers. It's funny, we have both Thielen and Diggs, both former Minnesota wide receivers on different teams now. It's just funny how that worked out. And then we've also got Brandon Cooks and Jamison Crowder, high upside guys. I really like this team, man, a lot. I think this team would compete, and I really like the way the draft fell to us this mock.
I really agree. I love the way that this roster fell to us. I think we made some really good picks, some investment picks. The position that you really need to make sure you have enough depth in, we have it. And like you said, we can pick up the tight ends or the wide receivers if we need them in the waiver wire. But I really love this roster. I think this could be a really successful roster as we move into the season.
I love it too, man. And yeah, to all the listeners out there, continue to mock draft, get a feel for everything. We looking back at this mock draft, I don't regret any of the picks that we made. I think we let the draft come to us. That's one of the big things as well, is just don't get in your head too much. Let the picks come to you, take the best available talent, and don't look back.
So, Justin, we are all set with our mock draft, and that does it for this week's episode. Please remember to subscribe, download, hit the bell for reminders, like our videos. We would really appreciate that. For the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show team, I'm Corey.
And I'm Justin.
And once again, this has been the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. See you next time.
Royalty-free music courtesy of Ben Sound. The views and opinions expressed on today's episode are that of the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. Remember to like and subscribe.